Sally the Zombie Cheerleader here, and Bad Juju and J-Bone have invited me to help introduce their Everything Edgar episode. And I have a brilliant gem for you, The Telltale Heart, as read by the legendary Bela Lugosi. Now, this recording seems to date from around 1946. Bela likely recorded this reading spot for his agent. His agent would then make copies to send them out to anyone interested in booking Bela's solo stage act, which also included a po-tail. So please enjoy this rare recording of The Telltale Heart, as read by Bela Lugosi.
True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am. But why will you say that I'm mad? The disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Listen and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. But once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object? There was none. For I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. And for his money, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, that was it. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. And whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. So by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution and foresight I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch on his door and opened it. Oh, so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out. Then I thrust in my head. And when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night, just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed. And so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me. It was his evil eye. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. When I was about to open the lantern, my thumb slipped upon the thin fastening. And the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour, I did not move a muscle. In the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed, listening. Presently, I heard a slight groan. And I knew it was a groan of mortal terror. He had been trying to fancy them causeless. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor." But all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with its black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. When I had waited a long time without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a little crevice in the lantern. Cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray like a thread of the spider shot out from the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. And it was open, wide open. I grew furious as I gazed upon it. All a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face, for I had directed the ray precisely upon the damned spot. Then there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew the sound well. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased, grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once, for in an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled a heavy bed over him. And I smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. In minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I would trouble me no more. If still you think me mad, you will think no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the walls so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye could detect anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. The tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night, and they had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, but what did I to feel? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man, I mentioned, was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasure, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and bade them rest. I, myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale. My wish had gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ear. But still they sat and chatted. The ring became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling. But it continued, and at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased. It was a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly. The noise steadily increased. Why did they long? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I spoke, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards. But the noise arose over all. It grew louder, 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 until the men chattered pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard that? Oh, my God! No, no! They heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making mockery of my horror. But anything was better than this agony, anything. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again, hark, louder, louder, louder. Villains, I shrieked. I admit the deed. Tear up the flanks. Here! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart.